Outside of the fact that I have family members who are teachers and I myself have taught, but I've taught online only, ESL, and I don't have a master's degree. This is just English as a second language. I do think there's something really important about education that children are missing and that needs to be thread. You need to thread that needle for them and let them know that there's a type of empowerment when it comes to being educated that might have to take the shape of students being in a classroom where they have to stand, put their phones away, they have to be blindfolded, and certain people are given certain things while others aren't given stuff, and they're going to see with whatever information they're given, whether it's verbal, oral, whatever, how they're able to make their way through a maze, let's say. I'm saying this as a brainstorming activity for schools that are mad that nobody wants to be taught from them, but in turn don't want to be taught. Because you got admin that care not that the teachers are struggling with verbally abusive, physically abusive students who don't feel like they can have any type of disciplinary action and enforced upon the students. And you got admin that is trying to, from the top down, get these I don't know if they're unions or teachers groups telling teachers how to make sure the students pass tests, and that's the whole agenda, removing the whole best parts of education, which is like the curiosity, the learning, the adventure of education. So it's just robbing the best parts of anybody wanting to learn, and then going, well, why don't they want to learn? Because you've robbed teachers the ability to be creative and to feel safe. Like, if they don't feel safe, they're not going to be creative. So there's this movie called Lean on Me, and basically it's based on the real life of a real person. His name is Joe Clark, and he changed a whole school around that was inside of an inner city, and they were physically, literally attacking teachers and kill. I think one teacher died. And if the parents, especially in these schools, in order to attend, you'd have to sign something making it very clear that your school does discipline the students. And you'd have to lay out, based on what they're doing, disciplinary actions are, up to and including if they physically attack or verbally attack a teacher or a substitute, that their parents actually could be fined or go to jail. And I think at that point, when you stop being on your back foot with parents and start, making them, which are, by the way, are a lot of different parents, a lot of different ideas, who are, some of them are dysfunctional, let's be honest. Giving them the power to tell you how to run things, that's its own problem. But these schools, they don't want to learn themselves. Like the school, the admin doesn't want to learn. And then they're like, why won't the kids learn? Because you're not learning. You have a system that's outdated. You have a system that's begging for something else and begging for change. And you have educated people with master's degrees who are all in unison right now saying something needs to change, but they're not the smart ones, apparently. You are not going to listen to them. They're not high enough in debt, and they're not getting paid less enough. Like, you're not robbing them of money enough for anything they have to say to matter. Like, it's just so twisted because it's an outcry from teachers and an educational system that's failing. So I'm saying this knowing it's a total waste of time. The educational system doesn't want to change. It never has. And there is an alternative. And the alternative would be something like online school. Very specifically, there's a system that my little girl attended called Stride K-12, Stride K-12. It's not any other type of K-12 system. It's actually a company that has hundreds of schools underneath its umbrella. And it's a website that serves all of those schools and provides the material. It provides for some families who make under $3,000 a month, depending. Some states it varies. You'll get a computer for free, and they'll let you have the computer while you're going to school. So if you are struggling inside of a school system that is robbing your student who is a good student and who is well behaved, and admin that won't listen to you, Stride K-12 is definitely the option that worked best for my student. She was able to thrive and take full responsibility for education from within Stride K-12. So that's what I would advise you to do. But I'm telling you right now, what it's all saying to me, it's like the dinosaurs. You can see all the signs are there that the dinosaurs are becoming extinct. The dodo bird, all the birds that are about to go extinct, people are warning you, yeah, there's something going on here. They're about to die. This is the same thing with the school system right now, the brick and mortar. They're doing something that is so wrong. that to have so many educated people screaming and yelling and shaking the admin of these schools. And it's not just one school, and it's just not just one system. It's all across the country. And nobody's listening because they themselves don't want to learn, and they are shocked that the students don't want to learn, even though the teachers don't feel safe and all of that. And the reason why I think Lean on Me is a really good movie is because it's showing you that if you have people with a spine, if you have people who have a true, sincere agenda and are willing to cut out the cancer of that place and kind of look people in the face and say, you're not going to do that here. And let me tell you, they're going to scare you with the, oh, lawsuit this, oh, lawsuit that. 17 to 19 states allow paddling of students, legally allow for a teacher to take what looks like a cricket bat, cricket, that sport that's played in India, a bat that's flat. And they allow a teacher to take a student out into the hallway and hit them at least 2 to 3 times solid with the solid swing. And I attended one of those schools for about 6 to 8 months. The principal has a paddleboard. And he literally will call the parents and say, can you come here? Now that the teacher has already paddled them, I'm going to do it, and I need to do this in front of you. And the parents applauded it. And they probably still do to this day. Because if your kid's in the paddle school, odds are you got some priorities and you're probably doing things right. But I don't think kids should be paddled, personally. But I did see a very upright, paying full attention. I know it's a different time too, and it's still happening. People still paddle today. Schools still paddle. Students who were on their best behavior. They were not stepping out of line. And it was very rare that you actually heard or seen. I'd hear it down the hallway. I'd hear the kid crying. I'd hear, all that. And there's always rumor about when the principal actually had to paddle somebody and then they saw the parents there. It's always rumors. If they're trying to scare people into saying, we're afraid of lawsuits, we're afraid of this, they're lying to you. They just don't want to change. The brick and mortar is becoming extinct. And sometimes some things do have to pass away. Because if they're not serving these wonderful educated people who could just be teaching in their house and not have to leave their house and actually do activities that they went to school for, like to be creative and to be fun with the students and to bring that curiosity and wonder into education that belongs there, instead of being hammered from the top down with, you got test scores, you got, certain types of scores you got to make for the state, which never works. It's been the case for years, and it's not helping the test scores. And these are always being done by people who don't have master's degrees or who have never taught inside of a classroom. That's always the story. I'm being trained by somebody who's never taught, and I've been teaching for 20 years. It's very bizarre. And it's because there's a system that's being, ushered out. Now, if all these schools decided to walk upright and change their ways, makes a parent sign a waiver knowing, hey, if your kid comes here, this is the standard. If they don't, bye. Because if your kid gets physical, you might end up in court. You might be the one that serves time. Your kid gets verbally abusive. You might be the one that's going to have to answer to it. You better tell your kid to act right. Your kid comes to school, they can't have their cell phone because our school has zero policy when it comes to cell phones, and that is the rule. And there are different things we're going to do, including up to expelling the student if we see them recording, fighting, whatever. But will they grow a pair and do that? No, they will not. They will not. But there are some things I do think would help, which is the threading of the importance of knowledge to having power. Like I said, the blindfold activity, making sure that students are standing up and doing something where they don't have the power to say no to it. And if they do, there are disciplinary actions saying, if you don't participate in this activity, which should be a whole class, that explains that he who has knowledge holds the power, holds their destiny. And that's something that needs to be taught to students. They need to thread through why math is so important, because it creates the webbing in your brain between the different parts of your brain that allows for logic to grow and allows for strategic steps to be taken to solve problems. Also, if students can have their cell phones with the camera and record people without any permission and post it places without permission, when I was growing up, you couldn't, even if you were a professional news agency, you had to actually have people sign a waiver. I was a part of a Fresh Voices filmmakers crew, like of kids who rich people financed. They basically financed us to have the equipment and the editing stuff needed at the time. Now editing is different. I'm doing editing right now, and it's very easy. But back then, the equipment was bulky and big and expensive. I actually did get into a women's film festival, and I was awarded into taking a trip to that festival because my film won. But anyway, my point is, when we went around doing our little projects, learning how to use the equipment because it was big and was bulky and heavy, we did have to sign a waiver saying that we'd have to pay them back in full if we broke stuff. But also, every person that we filmed, even if it was just their hand or their eye or whatever, because it was like a treasure hunt of films that we had to find, go find an eye, go find this or that. They had to sign a waiver. So we had little tiny clipboards that had paperwork, and we had to have the person's name, phone number, and do we have permission to film you? If the students can bring cameras into classrooms and post stuff places without the permission of the school, of the faces of other students, which the parents don't know about, then you're telling me you can't beat them to the punch with as cheap as cameras are today? You can't beat them to the punch and put a camera in every single classroom and give the families permission and a code to get into that class and see their students acting a fool if need be. I mean, the teacher could even text a mom in the middle of a dispute with the student and say, hey, can you come look at your kid? Or text message the admin and say, hey, take a look at this camera, start pressing record. Maybe it should be recorded. So then you can send the recording to the parent and you can say, hey, this is what your kid's doing. They can record the teachers and put the teachers on blast because they're using all the weapons that are available to them, and they understand how to use it. The students, they understand how to use the weapons that are put into their hands. And the teachers and admin, it's not the teacher's fault, are all wringing their hands like they don't know what to do. They use the same weapons against the students. They're trying to film teachers and claim teachers are doing stuff, they're editing out stuff that would actually also protect the school legally when they go and edit stuff out of context and try to say the teacher did or said something out of pocket because you don't see the whole conversation and how it built up and the teacher was just defending themselves. So why we're not updating the way in which we're dealing with students is because we're not willing to learn. The school system itself is not willing to learn. It sees what the students are doing, and it doesn't want to fight fire with fire. It doesn't want to meet students where they are. It doesn't want to entertain them in the way this new students need to be entertained, which really is just a disciplinary action across the board. It's like, it's not your job to entertain. It's not the teacher's job to entertain them. It's their job to educate them. Also, certain programs that were helping with emotional disorders and behaviors, now that's kind of the part-time job, if not the full job, of every teacher, according to them. Why is that? I mean, where's the funding for all that? Let me tell you something else. The state would save money if these buildings didn't have to be maintained and built. If families were just given computers inside of their house, the state would save a lot of money. And all the things that the schools are pocketing and putting in strange places. I'm sure there's leakage everywhere when it comes to financing of schools. I'm sure there is. Between building the school, the contractors taking advantage, between, all the things needed, like the janitors, and it all creates legal issues when push comes to shove. Get rid of the freaking building. Get rid of the building. Maybe we don't need the buildings anymore. Like, that's what the schools are really bringing me to the conclusion of. Like, you guys can't even keep up. So, like, why should you still be funded by the general public if now we're not even sure if you're educating the students, but causing almost like prison-like environments? That whole, I think it's called the Stanford Project, social experiment. There's some social experiment where basically the conditions were just so to create prisoners. And so when you have good students going to school and there's fights happening everywhere, what does that do for our society as a whole if that's the environment students are growing up in? The person who gets the better life ends up being the one who can articulate themselves well, who are out of the box thinkers, who are logical, who have reason, like they have a good reason about them, like they can reason well. Like, for example, for my job interviews, I have sat for job interviews, and every single one of them I've always gotten. There is not a job interview that I haven't got, unless I was like, well, I'm doing this other thing. So I do like several different job interviews. That's how you get a job. It's just how it is. So there are some that just never came through because I was busy, starting my new job. But everyone that I've sat for the job I really wanted, I've always gotten that job. You want to know why? It's because I studied human behavior. I studied human behavior. And what I was taught through my studies is that if you go to a job interview and you get your future employer to laugh, if you go to a job interview and you get them so comfortable with that conversation they forgot that it's a job interview because they don't want to do it either. They don't get comfortable with interviewing people any more than you like being interviewed. It's awkward for them. If you can make them forget that it's an interview and get them to laugh and then make them think I could have a drink with her later because she's very cool, because you're going to be within proximity of them pretty regularly because they're going to be your coworker or your boss. And they don't want to be with people that they don't think are funny or kind of, make their life a little easier for a little bit. They want to be with people they're like, yeah, you make me forget this is a job. Like if you get your employer to talk more than you, which is something Vince Vaughn actually taught me I was reading one of his interviews. He said if you go to a party and you get other people around you talking, they'll end the party going, oh, I had such a good time with you, but you didn't say anything. You got them talking. You interviewed them. That works like gangbusters. But it's because I studied human behavior. It's because I understood what I was walking into. It was knowledge, and knowledge is power. And I got jobs, everyone that I ever stepped into physically, like not just the online ones, but the ones I physically went to, dressed up. One of them, I had my baby, in my arms because I couldn't find anybody to take care of her. And I thought this might be weird. Like I don't know if I'll get this one. I got it. Look, I didn't want to do it, but I was really desperate for a job. If you could put that into children's heads, give them examples, give them. It should be a whole class. Give them quotes, inspirational quotes. You can show people who their knowledge alone is how they maintain and get millions of dollars. People like Shapiro. Dude is an attorney, but he's not doing the attorney work necessarily. He's sitting for an hour a day. It used to be 3 hours, okay? But he's sitting for an hour a day. And because he knows how to present in front of a camera, and because he understands what he's saying, he's articulate, and he has a good vocabulary, which I don't. I'm going to be honest. And he's well read, and he's passionate about what he's talking about. He's got multi-millions of dollars. That's what separates him from anybody else who looks like him, same ethnicity, same yarmulke, all of it. There are tons of dudes out there who might look like him and appear as so, but are not millionaires, and they're doing a lot harder work than he is. But the difference is knowledge and application. And so if you are able to inspire that, which would mean one whole class have to be about that. It would take a whole school with real disciplinary action, because there are teachers who listen to this and they go, I could never get my students to do anything, because you're part of a system that's failing you. That's why. It's not because the teachers are failing. It's because the system itself is saying we're going extinct because this society's outgrowing us and we're not going to learn. You could fold in some stuff about emotional intelligence. There are so many things that education doesn't touch up on that is really necessary. And to be honest, with the technology that we have, and like especially with AI, but there are certain stuff that we're emphasizing that won't serve children well. It just won't serve them well. I mean, I know it's why they got rid of, cursive, but people also don't understand is there's a connection between language and the building up of the brain. So there's some stuff that we can't get rid of and say, well, AI will do it. Like students don't have to learn to read because AI will do it. Well, they actually won't have the same brain capacity then. So really studying that and understanding what it is right now, not the old stuff, not the stuff that kids needed when I was in school. What do they really need to understand right now, and what is the best approach? Because as of right now, students aren't getting what they need to even be productive within a very basic workforce, not the complex kind. Are we teaching kids how to be successful at job interviews? Just some basic stuff for the starter jobs. They don't really know how to do that. Right. And I do think being part of the workforce is important, but another part of that is being able to communicate with people, keep eye contact, and make sure your face matches what you're saying, which is a problem that I encounter, is that people don't understand that, which I miss, by the way. I miss it a lot. It makes me feel kind of lonely. But I know I'm talking to a younger person when they'll say something, but their body doesn't match what they say. And sometimes their eyes don't either. And it makes me feel like I'm kind of talking to almost like a psychopath. It's giving psychopath vibes. And I know that's not what they're trying to do, but it's like a dead stare. And it's like, well, what are you going to do for me? And I'm like, but I'm coming to the counter and asking you for help. You're supposed to be serving me because I'm the customer. Why are you looking at me like I should be serving you? I don't understand. And I know they don't mean it, and I know it has something to do with technology, and maybe there's a part of the social interaction of society that's also being extinct, or it's a sign that we're becoming extremely unhealthy as humans because it starts to make people feel like NPCs, If you have a good student, exposing them to the toxic behavior and ways of a system that doesn't know what it's doing anymore, that it doesn't know what its purpose is except to create pain and confusion and frustration and more degrees for somebody to pay for that they're actually not going to use or ever pay off by being a teacher. That's just how it is. It's dysfunctional. It doesn't know what it's doing anymore. It doesn't understand its purpose. And so it needs a new philosophy statement. It needs to recalculate its whole system. And it will never do it. It's like trying to change the church. They have this kind of mantra of we got to keep tradition to no end, to literally extinction, which is not to serve anybody at any time except for ourselves. And that's what schools are feeling like because it's not serving the teachers, it's not serving the student. Who's it serving? Is there a money making scheme happening? I'm just wondering what's happening is my question. There's too many things that are wrong and off to for something to not clearly be fishy. We like to ask the question, are they learning? But we know they're not. We know it. Watch Lean on Me, and you're going to see that this is the total overhaul that we need, 100%. And will they do it? No. May God be with you. Where do students need to be tailored or adjusted, or because they're not doing very well in the workforce? That's what I'm hearing. That there's a generation that's away from me, that's far back, like the 20s, 25, 18-year olds that are not doing well in the workforce. Why is that? And that's what really education was all about, was making sure people could enter the workforce